Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Madam Attorney General, let me ask you this question. Were you consulted by the White House before they deployed National Guard troops to cities in the United States?
I am not going to discuss any internal conversations with the White House.
You won't even say whether you talked to the White House about this?
I am not going to discuss any internal conversations with the White House with you, Ranking Member.
I noticed that. What's the secret? Why do you want to keep this secret? The American people don't know the rationale behind the deployment of National Guard troops in my state. The word is, and I think it's been confirmed by the White House, they are going to transfer Texas National Guard units to the state of Illinois. What's the rationale for that?
Yeah, Chairman, as you shut down the government, you voted to shut down the government, and you're sitting here, our law enforcement officers aren't being paid. They're out there working to protect you. I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump. And currently, the National Guard are on the way to Chicago. If you're not going to protect your citizens, President Trump will.
Been on this committee for more than 20 years. That's the kind of testimony you expect from this administration. A simple question as to whether or not they had a legal rationale for deploying National Guard troops becomes grounds for a personal attack. I think it's a legitimate question. It's my responsibility. She refuses to answer as to whether she had any conversation with the White House about deploying national troops in my state. That's an indication, I'm afraid, where we are politically in this place. Let me ask you another question. I want to, if you will, hold on a second. Make sure I got the right page of facts here. You testified under oath when you last before this committee that before your appointment to Attorney General, you had served as a representative of some sort for the royal family of Qatar. There was an issue that came before you in May when President Trump accepted a $400 million luxury jet from the royal family of Qatar for temporary use as Air Force One before it's permanently gifted to the Trump Presidential Library Foundation. The Constitution unequivocally bestows on Congress the power to control whether any officer of the United States, including the President, may accept a gift, quote, from any king, prince, or foreign state, end of quote. And this gift clearly violates the statutory regime enacted by Congress. You've refused to answer a letter I sent to you 5 months ago, asking the legal rationale you relied on to advise President Trump to accept this unprecedented gift from your former legal client. Can you make a promise today that you will disclose that?
Disclose what, Ranking Member?
I assume there was a letter or some sort of statement from your office to the White House to advise them that you felt it was permissible?
First, to address my role with Qatar, as I addressed with you during my confirmation hearing, I disclosed it in my SJQ. In private practice, I worked for Qatar for anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. That was my only involvement, and I made that very clear, and I'm very proud of everything I've done with anti-human trafficking. Obviously, in preparing any advice for the President on a jet or anything else, we consult with the Office of Legal Counsel. The confidentiality applies to their input as well. And Chairman, if you would approve and vote to approve, as Chairman Grassley said, excuse me, Ranking Member, as Chairman Grassley said, my employees, we would answer your letters a lot faster, yet you're stalling them at every stop. And to go back to your previous question, your city has a murder rate 5 times higher than New York's. 571 homicides last year. If you were serious about protecting your people, you would be asking this administration for help. You're saying that we're coming into your state and your city. We're there to help make America safe and Illinois safe, whether or not you want to.
I believe cutting federal grant programs to law enforcement in my state and across the nation does not make us any safer, and you've done just that. You've supplanted that decision by sending in National Guard troops to California and other places. That is a situation where the governors have not asked for that help. If you truly wanted to do this on a bipartisan basis, you wouldn't defy a governor, you would work with them. I'm prepared to do that. I'm prepared to work with this administration. But cutting these grants to law enforcement does not make us any stronger as a nation or give us the tools we need to reduce crime in Chicago. Now, I'd just like to ask you, when it came to this Qatar situation, did you consult with the ethics office in the Department of Justice before making your decision on this gift of a jet?
Chairman, I didn't gift a jet to anyone. My Office of Legal Counsel provides confidential advice to the President, to the White House, period. And you're conflating two issues. Cutting grants. I was very clear about what grants we've cut and what grants we haven't. Only 7%. And if you have a grant in Illinois that you think that I've cut that is protecting law enforcement officers or your people, you personally call me and I will work with you to turn that grant back on. I think many of the Democrats here can tell you, I have worked with them to turn grants back on. There's an appeal process. Tell me a specific grant that I have turned off in Illinois that would help law enforcement, and I will work with you. But you have not done that.
Did you take a look?
The National Guard is on the way right now as we speak. Oh, by the way, so is Director Patel and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. You're sitting here grilling me, and they're on their way to Chicago to keep your state safe.
Madam Attorney General, it's my job to grill you. Investigation of your agency is part of my responsibility and this committee. You may not like the experience, but others have weathered the storm and answered questions in a respectful manner.
Can you tell me the grants,
Yes.
Ranking Member, please?
Take a look at the president's budget on HIDA grants. What happens to it in his proposed budget?
I'd be glad to meet with you on the
It's
grants.
cut by 1/3 from $300 million to $196. That's one example of a grant that works, and your administration has suggested cutting it in the budget lies ahead. I want to ask you about items in a letter I sent you in July that you have not answered. In February, you made a public claim that the Epstein client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now for review, end of quote. You then produced already public information and no client list at a major media event hosted at the White House. Attorney General Bondi, why did you publicly claim to have the Epstein client list waiting for your review and then produce nothing relevant to that claim?
Senator Durbin, if you listen to my entire clip on that, I said I had not reviewed it yet, that it was sitting on my desk along with the JFK files, the Martin Luther King files. And I said I had not yet reviewed it. And if you see our memo on Epstein, you will see, our memo on Epstein clearly points out that there was no client list, our July 6th memo. You also didn't let me respond to the HIDA question. The budget transfers $196 million for high-intensity drug trafficking areas to the Office of Justice Programs, OJP. The Justice Department will continue to administer those grants under OJP in 2026.
Going back to the Epstein files, according to another whistleblower who made a protected disclosure to my office, you pushed the FBI to review approximately 100,000 Epstein-related records on an arbitrarily short deadline in March, and the FBI was directed to flag any documents that mentioned President Trump. Nothing came of that review until July when DOJ and FBI released an unsigned memo stating, quote, there's no incriminating client list. Why was the July 7th memo unsigned?
The July 7th memo came from the FBI and the Department of Justice. Director Patel answered those questions very clear. And, you know, Senator Durbin, I find it very interesting that you refused repeated Republican requests to release the Epstein flight logs in 2023 and 2024. You fought that. Did you take money from Reid Hoffman, campaign donations, who was a huge Epstein friend? Why did you fight for years? Why did you fight to not disclose the flight logs, Senator Durbin?
I can tell you I did not refuse. One of the senators here wished to produce those logs, and I asked her to put it in writing, and she never did.
Yeah, I think Senator Blackburn would quarrel with you on that.
I will quarrel with you as to Reid, somebody that you mentioned I never heard of.
Reid Hoffman.
So who gave the order to flag records related to President Trump?
To flag records for President Trump?
To flag any records which included his name.
I'm not going to discuss anything about that with you, Senator.
Eventually, you're going to have to answer for your conduct in this. And you won't do it today, but eventually you will.
What you just watched wasn't just another tense Senate hearing. It was a microcosm of how power shields itself, how truth gets twisted, and how those in the orbit of Trump's influence turn accountability into theater. Senator Dick Durbin, a veteran lawmaker and one of the few who still treats oversight as a serious duty, pressed Attorney General Pam Bondi for basic transparency. He asked about National Guard deployments, foreign gifts to Trump, and the elusive Epstein client list that Bondi once claimed was sitting on her desk. Each of those questions went to the same heart of the matter: who is really pulling the strings and who benefits when power refuses to answer? And instead of a clear, factual response, Bondi did what Trump world officials do best. She deflected, attacked, and politicized. Notice how she pivoted from the substance of Durbin's question to a personal jab about Chicago's crime rate. That's not a coincidence. That's strategy. When you don't have a credible answer, you manufacture outrage, redirect blame, and hope the public forgets what was asked in the first place. This wasn't an exchange about public safety. It was about power evasion dressed up as toughness. But what really stands out here is the Qatar connection. Durbin reminded Bondi that before becoming Attorney General, she represented the royal family of Qatar. Then he asked why the Trump administration, under her legal advice, accepted a $400 million luxury jet from Qatar, an act that could violate the Constitution's emoluments clause, which explicitly forbids U.S. officials from accepting gifts from foreign states without Congress's approval. This clause exists to prevent exactly what the founders feared most: foreign influence over American leadership. Yet Bondi refused to answer, claiming confidentiality. The irony is staggering. The nation's top law enforcement officer hides behind secrecy while being asked about the law itself. Then came the Epstein files. Durbin pressed Bondi on her claim that she had the client list on her desk. When she was challenged to produce it, she suddenly said there was no list, only public records. It's the oldest Washington trick. Dangle the promise of transparency to look tough on crime, then quietly walk it back once the cameras turn off. Even more troubling, a whistleblower allegedly revealed that Bondi's DOJ directed the FBI to review 100,000 Epstein-related records on a short deadline, specifically flagging any mention of Donald Trump. That's not impartial justice. That's selective protection. If true, it means the DOJ's priorities under Bondi weren't to uncover the truth, but to manage the optics, to insulate power rather than confront it. And when Durbin tried to push further, Senator Marsha Blackburn jumped in, not to defend facts, but to defend Bondi's pride. She accused Durbin of misrepresenting her and made the issue about process instead of substance. This is the essence of modern right-wing politics: turn every factual inquiry into a personal feud. The result? The real questions about Epstein, about corruption, about abuse of power get buried beneath partisan noise. What this hearing revealed is more than the arrogance of one official. It showed how deeply accountability has decayed under a political culture that rewards loyalty over truth. Bondi's evasions weren't just personal, they were institutional. Every "I can't discuss that" was a shield for power. Every pivot was a window into how easily justice can be derailed when transparency becomes optional. And here's what viewers need to take away. Democracy isn't just eroded by corruption, it's eroded by indifference. When those in power refuse to answer questions that the public has a right to know, it's not just a political scandal, it's a civic failure. The Epstein case, the Qatar jet, the selective investigations, all of them tell the same story: a system that bends when accountability threatens the powerful. So as we watch these hearings unfold, we have to remember that democracy doesn't survive on slogans or spin. It survives on truth. And truth only thrives when people demand it, loudly and persistently, even when those in power would rather we look away. If you believe that transparency and justice aren't partisan issues, make sure you subscribe to Liberal Lens. This channel exists to break down power plays like this, to show how manipulation hides behind official titles, and to remind you that accountability doesn't start in Washington. It starts with informed citizens like you.